Supreme security concerns as the person charged with keeping Supreme Court justices safe calls on the governors of Maryland and Virginia for help. You know, there's a lot of finger pointing, but not many answers. Protesters have been gathering outside the homes of conservative justices in Maryland and Virginia since May, when the decision to overturn Roe v. Wade was leaked. Supreme Court Marshal Gail Curley wrote letters Friday to Maryland Governor Larry Hogan and Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin, asking them to put an end to the protests at justices' homes. Curley wrote, quote, "Since then, protest activity at justices' homes, as well as threatening activity, has only increased." The letter referred to an attempt on a justice's life, an apparent reference to the arrest of 26-year-old Nicholas Roski near Justice Brett Kavanaugh's home in Maryland last month. U.S. Marshals scared him away. Then Roski called 911 on himself, saying he traveled from California to assassinate the justice because of the leaked Roe opinion. Roski has pleaded not guilty to attempted murder, with his trial set to begin in August. Now, before that, Governors Hogan and Youngkin themselves wrote a letter to U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland asking the Justice Department to enforce a federal law that forbids demonstrations that are intended to sway justices' opinions on pending cases or intimidate them. Now, Hogan's communications director pointed on Twitter that in the letter from the governors, Hogan said that Maryland's Attorney General has brought the constitutionality of the state's laws into question, and that's why he called on the DOJ to enforce the federal law. The statute in place since 1950 says in part, quote, "Whoever with the intent of interfering with, obstructing, or impeding the administration of justice pickets or parades in or near a building housing a court of the United States, or in or near a building or residence occupied or used by such judge, shall be fined under this title or imprisoned." U.S. Marshals protect justices around the clock. Last month, President Biden signed a bill to increase security for justices and their families. As protests have continued, marshals have been seen outside the justices' homes, preventing any protests from getting out of hand. Now, people have a right to free speech, but justices, their families, and their neighbors have a right to privacy and security as well. Now, nobody's calling for an end to demonstrations outside the court, but going into neighborhoods, that's taking things way too far. And someone has to be willing to enforce the law. Joining me now is attorney Jim Trusty, a former Maryland Assistant State's Attorney. Jim, thanks so much for coming on.
Sure.
Seems like a difficult situation, but when you have a difficult situation, there's also a lot of finger pointing. I can't tell where the buck stops with who.
Well, each side says the buck stops there. I mean, there's no profile and courage here, but I have to tell you, I really reserve the primary brunt of my anger towards the Attorney General. This 18 U.S.C. 1507, this statute is spot on. It is not case specific. It doesn't require the pendency of the Dobbs case anymore. It's about having a specific intent to obstruct or intimidate the administration of justice. And it again obviously applies to the homes of Supreme Court justices. So you've had a situation where the Attorney General has walked away from that statute without any real explanation. He's endangering the lives of everyone in those households, endangering the community. And again, we're at a position where we've had an attempted assassination of a sitting Supreme Court justice. We had a man travel all the way across the country only to be talked out of it at the last second by his sister. So, you know, I don't understand how the Attorney General can focus on things like, you know, CRT protests in Virginia where he's going to use the Patriot Act, but refuses to unleash any sense of federal resources to protect these homes. On the state side, it's a little complicated. It's still not exactly a free speech issue. If you have disorderly conduct, if you have obstruction of ingress and egress, then you have, you know, county and state violations that can be brought to bear. And the last thing I would just say on that is that, you know, I'm not saying that everyone suddenly needs to be locked up, that they have to have these, you know, wagons full of prisoners leaving Chevy Chase, Maryland. What I'm saying is, enforce the law to disperse these groups and keep the community safe.
So you mentioned a few things there. Let me go to the constitutionality. Why is it not a First Amendment issue? I mean, again, from the outset, you look at people saying they are protesting a legal decision from the court. It's within their rights to challenge the court, to debate the court. They're allowed to do it. So why is this no longer a First Amendment issue?
Well, I'm not saying it's a totally dead issue. I just don't think it's a winner to the point where you don't enforce the law. You know, First Amendment focuses on time, place, and manner. And you've got a situation right now where people are protesting in front of the residences of Supreme Court justices, that's not protected territory, particularly if they harbor some sort of intent to influence the court. And we've seen that, after the leak and prior to the decision, they were making it very known that they want to influence the court. And they're still in a position when it comes to the conservative justices, at least, where they are making it clear that they want justice to change. They want the administration of justice to to have a different standard for them. And I think that still fits within the statute cleanly.
Why is it so difficult to stop the gatherings? I mean, on the outset, you would say, can't you just stop this? Someone's going to get hurt. It's just a large group of people. Can't law enforcement step in? What's the difficulty there?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's no different than any sort of protest. If there's a will, there's a way. And it doesn't mean you have to turn, federal agents or county officers into like these nightmarish authoritarian figures. But I think the politicians in the settings here have made a calculation that just in case there's any resistance to dispersing, and there probably would be some form of resistance, that they don't like the optics of that. They don't like to be seen as the protectorate of conservative justices. And I really think that if you look at the track record of this attorney general in particular, that if these were protests happening at Sotomayor's house or historically at Ruth Bader Ginsburg's house, there'd be a much different, much more
you believe that?
reaction.
You believe that? You believe that
sorry?
if it was liberal justices, then this would be different?
I think so. You look at the track record of what the attorney general was focused on. It's very politicized. The department is very politicized. I think there's a little bit of a subtle message here, which is a terrible message when you've got people like Mr. Roski that are kind of queuing into it and are willing to act on their own kind of mental illness and criminality.
Jim, I have to ask you, I think a lot of us were surprised when the Roe decision came down because due to safety concerns, wouldn't the court maybe, we would have predicted, release the opinion towards the end of their term, then there's a recess, but to release it right now in the middle of this, it always seemed a little questionable.
Well, I'm not a great student of the process of releasing the opinions. I know there is a pattern to it in terms of kind of an alphabetical order to the authors of the opinion. So it might have been something, it was within a couple of days at the end of the term. It might have been something where they were determined to use the same process they always use and not kind of tilt the scales in terms of the timing.
Hey, listen, strange times. So we're all trying to make sense of everything that's going on. Jim Trusty, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Sure, thank you.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your cable provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.